Well, welcome everybody to what is a very special edition of the Fred Minnick Show. I am joined with a star-studded cast of incredible guests, and I want to start with someone who's a dear friend of mine, I think one of the greatest people in the distilling business, Marianne Eaves. Marianne, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Fred. How about you?
Now, I'm fantastic, and I'm just loving all the baby photos I'm seeing lately. And how is life as a new mom right now? Because you're still working, you're still doing stuff.
It's definitely a balance. Typically, she's right next to me. I either have a bottle in her mouth or holding her while I'm trying to type with one hand. So it's as much as I can do in quarantine. Luckily, we got the blending done for Sweetens Cove while I was still pregnant, so didn't have to worry about juggling too many bourbon samples with a tiny infant. Now she's about 2.5 months old, so I think might be a little easier these days. I think that the way that I approach it is very in the weeds. There's not a lot of folks that would go to the level of detail that I do. Having 3 barrels and making a batch is a little bit different than going to the extent of every single barrel that these guys acquired. There was 100 barrels. So Andy was mentioning when he and Drew came to visit to watch the process, the entire lab bench was covered in these 113-year-old bourbon samples, which for folks who don't do this for a living, that looks pretty intimidating. And it took me several days to go through. It was a swish and spit situation because it was still carrying baby Andy at the time. But what I do, and for this brand in particular, because I knew that some of these barrels were going to be flagged for single barrel as well, I wanted to get to know every single one. So I took at least 15 minutes with each one of these barrels, taking notes, really paying attention to the mouthfeel and getting a feel for what different flavors they encompassed. And one of my favorite parts of this, even though they aren't labeling this first lot of 100 barrels with different batches, there are different batches. They said, Marianne, we trust you and your process. We want you to put these together in the way that you think develops the flavor best. And what I think we came out with was 5 really cool, unique, but still balanced and nuanced batches. So, and the flavor profiles of these individual barrels and the proof level was really kind of across the board. We saw 93 proof all the way up to 104 proof. And this is coming right out of the barrel. They had kind of a low barrel entry proof going in, but they all lost proof. And, I got some that were like hot pepper all the way to like fruit and floral and like, one was like a fruit punch note, and then I got some that were like smokehouse and meaty. And what I think a lot of people don't really realize is that every single one of these barrels in any warehouse, people will say that they're able to achieve a consistent flavor profile barrel over barrel, but it's just not true. You get one barrel from one tree, so that has a significant impact on these unique flavors, and then they all breathe differently because of the grain of the wood and where they're positioned. So every single barrel has a different flavor to offer. There might be some that are close, but they won't be the same. So taking 100 barrels and splitting them up in whatever way my wildest dreams took me was really, really fun. And it took a little while to do it in the way that I thought was the best and came out the best.
One of the things that I find interesting when it comes to, like, you have 100 barrels, what are the flavors that you are looking to combine? Like, after you just gave us a broad spectrum of notes, from smokehouse, to sweeter. What are you trying to combine when you're blending something? Do you get do you sit down with Mark and his team and figure out what they're trying to achieve, or do you just go in there and taste all the barrels and say, this is what I want to do today?
Well, they, these guys had tasted some of the samples of the product that they purchased because they did it the smart way. A lot of folks go into this type of blending project just getting whatever they have access to. They're like, oh, there was 100 XX barrels wherever, and we bought them. Like, did you taste them? No. Okay, so if you don't know the quality of what you're getting, then it makes my job harder. They knew they had good stuff. They assured me of that. I trusted that they had good product. I know the reputation of the juice itself, which I think because of a confidentiality thing we can't disclose. But as I said, the flavors that these different whiskeys can present is so interesting. And that was also a big draw too. I was like, I get to taste 100 barrels of 13-year-old product. I haven't done that since my Brown Forman days. Put me back in, coach. So I really love, and coming from Brown Forman, that they talk about the flavor wheel, the fruit, the sweet, the wood, the grain, the floral notes. So my palate has always been, it was trained early to look for kind of broader flavor categories. So I go about it that way. And then, sometimes there's just one thing that'll punch you in the face. Like I tasted a barrel and I was like, oh my God, this is like a mango got trapped in the barrel while it was aging. And sometimes that happens. So I like to pay attention to that, but taking these different pieces of the pie and matching them together so that the experience is across your entire palate. That is one thing that is really important to me, is that it's an experience from the front of your palate to the back of your palate, that you're gonna experience these different flavors in different places. That it has a nice long warm finish, because not every barrel, it might be hot up front and then it's a quick finish. So balancing all of that out as well. So not just the flavors, but the experience on your palate.